Forsaken is a very popular game on Roblox, but how well does it stand up to the OG killer game on Roblox? That's right, Bear Alpha. This game is kind of the reason I play Roblox, but since I see Forsaken popping up so much and even I made a video on it, why not compare the two games in animation style, gameplay, lore, idea, and execution? Starting off with the animation / style. Bear Alpha offers more of like a Roblox game that actually looks like Roblox. If you look at older games like Doomspire, Brick Battle, or even recent games like Grow a Garden, it looks like Roblox, if you know what I mean. Most of Bear Alpha, including, or mainly the older levels, actually resembles a lot of like old Roblox. And that's what I like so much about it. However, Forsaken gives old Roblox maps a new feel with some of its animations and things like that. On one hand, I do feel like I like Bear Alpha's map layout a bit more because it's more original instead of just here's a map from old Roblox brought into the new world. However, I do think the actual art style of the survivors and killers in Forsaken and even some of the really cool cutscenes are better than Bear Alpha. For example, when it's the killer, look at Bear Alpha's. And now look at Forsaken's. Tell me, which one do you think is better? I was watching this Bear Alpha rage bait video where this one guy just started where this guy started hating on the game for no reason. But something he did get right is that the intros of being a bear and survivor look like a PowerPoint presentation. Honestly, Bear, you gotta up your game with this. But the Forsaken intros, they're so clean and nice. But for things like map layouts and the style of those, I'm gonna have to give that to Bear Alpha, so that's 1 point to Bear Alpha. But in the animations in lobbies and some of the way you interact with the characters in Forsaken, I gotta also give Forsaken a point. So currently Bear Alpha and Forsaken are tied up for like the best Roblox killer game. Next up is gameplay. Both games are pretty similar, however, the deal is Bear Alpha has custom game modes, and these game modes can add some much needed life into a game like this. From what I know, I don't think Forsaken has any extra game modes, like 2 killers, everybody but one is the killer, infection mode. Let me actually look that up. So yeah, I looked it up. Forsaken does not have any extra game modes like infection. Even Bear Alpha has freeze tag. So I gotta give the gameplay over to Bear Alpha here. Next up is the lore, and if you ask me, it's pretty clear here. Don't get me wrong, I think that Bear Alpha has some pretty interesting lore. There was in Roblox, a bear virus outbreak went out amongst the lands. There's all these weird characters. These 2 bears, Sam and Bear, had some sort of beef. Don't get me wrong, it's interesting, but some of the stuff that happens is just kind of goofy. Sam, one of the other characters, lights Bear on fire for making cheesy garlic bread. But you know, I have no idea what the Forsaken lore is, but game theory. If they were able to make a video on Forsaken, then you know it's good. I know like every character has their own backstory and everything, you know, so this one's pretty clear. I'm going to give this point to Forsaken. So currently they're tied up 2-2. Next up, and this is one I forgot to mention at the start of this video, are the characters. In Forsaken, there's goods and bads with all the characters. See, with killers, they each have their own move sets and extra skins to put on top of the killers. However, if each killer and each survivor each have their own abilities, then there's going to be needs for tons of nerfings and buffs and nerfings and buffs. And that's one of the things I hate about one of the games I've been playing a lot recently, Marvel Rivals, because they have to constantly buff characters and then nerf characters and then buff characters and then nerf characters. But with Forsaken, it's like that, but also having each character having a custom ability is cool. But in Bear Alpha, there's hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of skins across both the games that you can choose from, not affecting any fundamentals about the game and not having to nerf and buff every single one. Imagine how hard that would be. There's probably 300 skins across all the Bear games, and if each one of them had their own special abilities, it would take way too much longer for them to come out. You'd have to constantly nerf and buff them depending on the metas that people have found about them. And that's just something I do not want to have to deal with in a game. Correct me if I'm wrong and if it really does not affect the game. But what I figured out when I first got to play the killer, you get absolutely beaten up by the survivors. If they know about the game and you don't, then there's a huge, and I mean huge, you might even call it massive, skill gap between the players. In Bear Alpha, yes, there's a skill gap, but if you're a survivor, I do not think it is that hard to just complete some puzzles and run around. Even in Forsaken, it is not that hard to be a survivor and just run around from the killer. And when you become Bear, or in this case, the killer, in Forsaken, there's going to be a much higher skill gap because you have to learn each survivor's moves, each killer's moves, and you have to find out how to counter pick and whatever. I don't know. But in Bear Alpha, you get to have more fun if you're a new player. You don't get constantly freaking tossed around as the killer. Which when I first played as Jason, I found that very annoying. So I'm going to give this point of gameplay to, not gameplay, characters to Bear Alpha. So the current score is 3-2. Next up is the idea. So right off the bat, Bear's idea is very weird. A bear is chasing around in a bunch of Roblox maps like Yorick's Resting Place, the Haunted Mansion, and Robloxia across different infections and multiple skins. Like look at Baldy Bear. It's really weird. So that's a really weird idea, but I think that Forsaken's idea of taking a bunch of classic Roblox characters and hackers from work at a pizza place like John Doe, I think that is a very good idea, and they should have expanded upon it upon release. I feel like it's a very good idea to have the glass house and the other maps, you know. So I'm gonna have to give this point to Forsaken. So the current score is 3-3. Finally, what it all comes down to after 3-3 is the execution. Now, even though Bear had the strangest ideas, it worked. It was countless fun. There was constant updates. You can get skins for each of the bears. You can unlock badges to get more skins for the characters. And don't get me wrong, Forsaken does do that. But Bear has been building this up over years. So there's many new game modes now. There's many new bears. And there's just so much to explore and do in the Bear universe. Even after you complete everything in Bear, there's these new spicy servers with people that have gotten 100,000 quids over time. So you can basically go to a server with a bunch of pros and unlock new expensive skins to play after that. And it gives you a reward for being the best. But Forsaken's execution, I just feel like they could have leaned. I really like how Forsaken turned out. Don't get me wrong, I like both games. But Forsaken, I feel like they could have tapped into the whole Roblox feel a bit more. Like, imagine if there was a Builder Man survivor, or you can play as Zach Nolan from the camping games as a killer. Or you can play as the weird smile creature, or the Rake. SCP-096. There's a SCP-3008 game. Yeah, that's popular. Whatever killer is in that, you can bring into Forsaken. I feel like that would be a much better executed game than what Bear turned out to be. Now, since Bear is a lot older by a few years, maybe I just have to wait for Forsaken to go through in the next few years. But right now, it's looking like the final score is going to be 4-3. Bear Alpha wins it. If you guys think I'm wrong or have to add anything or what your opinions are, then please leave them in the comments. I'd like to know. And by the way, if you like Bear Alpha, check out the Bear Alpha Animated Series YouTube channel below, and I'll see y'all in a bit. Bye!